Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your brand new source for Green Bay Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy. I'm here today with my dad, my co-host Matt, always here with me today. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Went to a concert last night. Things are good. It's hot
how
here,
was it?
but it was fun.
Nice.
Saw Leon Bridges.
Okay. Yeah, it's hot as hell here out on the West Coast right now, but
Yep.
we're still here, sweating in our respective studios, as it were.
We are either literally or metaphorically on fire here in California right now.
Yep, and that is kind of a standard way of being here in California. But today, we are recording to you this on Thursday night, September 8th. We will be prepping, giving you guys all of the news and notes and information you need for the Packers' upcoming Week 1 matchup versus the Minnesota Vikings. As the Packers open their 2022 season, and football's officially back, Dad.
Yes, the first game was tonight. I did watch it. Saw the Rams and the Bills.
Yep, Bills are going to be pretty dang good this year.
Bills' defense was looking pretty tough.
Bills' offense was looking pretty tough. Josh Allen had more rushing yards than the entire Rams team. Fun fact. But this is not a Bills podcast. It was a great game, though. Recommend checking out the highlights if you haven't already. We are here to talk about that Packers-Vikings game, as we said. But before we do that, just want to plug some of our socials really quick. You can find us on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. You can find us on YouTube, the Father-Son Packers podcast. This podcast is also streaming to any and all audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Wherever podcasts can be found, you can find us. But yeah, come on, check us out. Really help us with our numbers. Give us a follow on Twitter. Yeah, come in, see what all the buzz is about, so to speak. But anyway, Dad, without further ado, you ready to get into prepping for this game?
Absolutely. We've been ready to prep. We've been hoping to prep for this game for months.
I've been ready for football to start since the draft. It has been too dang long since I've had some Green Bay Packers football. But I think let's get started. So, like with any game, as you guys are going to get used to here on our Thursday night pregame podcast, we're going to start with the injury report. We're going to start with the Packers side of the injury report. I'm just going to read it off to you really quick. So on Thursday, the Packers had 2 DNPs, which means did not participate. Marcedes Lewis, but that should not be that much of a concern. He usually does not practice on Thursday, and it was mostly a vet rest day for him. The one to be slightly more concerned about is Alan Lazard, who Matt LaFleur said, quote-unquote, got stepped on. It seems to be being marked as some kind of
ankle injury.
Okay, cool. Yes.
So,
and then
don't know exactly what that means.
Yeah, that's a bit of a tough one. The ones who were limited were David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, Darnell Savage, and Robert Tonyan. A lot of big names there. And the ones who are on the injury report but were full participants in practice on Thursday were Mason Crosby, Tipa Naliai, Jake Hansen, Dallin Levitt, Yash Nyman, and Christian Watson. So nice that all those guys are full. Dad, anything strike you as interesting from the Packers side of the injury report?
Nothing super noteworthy. I mean, the only change in status was Marcedes Lewis, who was just getting a vet rest day. Nobody else got hurt. Nobody had a dramatic improvement that changed their status on the injury report. There was already a surprise in terms of things like how quickly, Levitt got back to full status. And I guess also noteworthy that Mason Crosby is also a full participant, which is good to see coming up.
Yeah, that's definitely good. The good news. I think there's a decent amount of bad news here that while a lot of people thought that Elton and Bakhtiari might play week 1, we're leaning towards playing week 1, and they still might. They did participate in a team portion of practice on Thursday, so that's definitely good news. You would want to see that if they're going to play. But they are still limited, so it is still a little 50-50 on if they're playing. And Lazard still not practicing does not really bode well for his chances of playing. And also,
no, he really only has one more chance on Friday to see if he can get a practice in to have a chance to play. And then there's and some mysteries were solved on Wednesday with like that the pec injury for Jenkins, for example, what it was that he had to rest for.
Yeah, and I think it is also concerning that Darnell Savage hamstring injury must have been very serious because it's been since family night. It's been 5 weeks, and I know you're supposed to be very cautious with hamstring injuries, but it's been a while now.
Yeah, I guess that doesn't the time doesn't bother me that much. It's kind of what you would expect, actually.
That's fair.
That
That's fair.
once it happened, they were just going to shut him down until they couldn't anymore. Is my suspicion anyway.
Yeah, and other than that, there's not a whole lot really there on the injury report. Bobby Tunyon said he really wants to play. I'm sure a lot of those guys really do want to play. I hope we see him out there, but doesn't mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. But let's move on to the Vikings injury report. It is a lot shorter than the Packers. They had one DNP, Alexander Madison, who did not practice for personal reasons, so not a whole lot of news, or not really much to know there. And then two limited participants in Jonathan Bullard and Lewis Seen, their first-round pick safety.
Yeah, with Seen showing up kind of midweek on the report.
Yeah, he just got added.
Probably something they're worried about.
Yeah. So I would imagine, given the fact that he just popped up on there, he might not play, which would be tough for them. First-round pick, you want to see him on the field. But honestly, I think mostly I think you could look at this injury report and say they're looking pretty clean for week 1.
Yes, yeah, their injury report is pretty short.
Yeah, you'd say that again. But anyway, Dad, let's get on to the game preview. And I think what makes most sense to start is to talk a little bit about LaFleur's history against the Vikings. The LaFleur-led Packers, that is, are 4-2 versus the Vikings. Although the Vikings are the only NFC North team to beat the LaFleur-led Green Bay Packers. Last year they split home and home. The Packers took the second matchup 37-10 in Green Bay, Week 17 in the snow a little bit. Was it Christmas Day? Am I remember that correctly?
No, it was later. Christmas Day was the Browns game.
Yes, you are right. Good call.
It was actually a 2022 game.
Yes, you are smart. It was just after the turn of the new year. But Kirk Cousins, if you did not remember, did not play in this matchup. So it's a bit of one of those games that obviously very nice to beat the crap out of the Vikings, and I'll take any one of those I can get. But in terms of trying to predict how this game will go, it's not entirely valuable, I would say.
I think what you really can't measure much is how the defense performed against Sean Mannion, though the Packers' offense did pretty well.
Yeah, but
I'd have to look drive to drive to see how many short fields they got.
I was going to say, it is a lot easier to play offense when the other team is not moving the ball at all. And the defense is on the field all the time. But anyway, that's why we decided to take more of a closer look at our first matchup versus the Vikings, in which the Vikings won 34-31 in Minnesota in Week 11, in terms of trying to kind of use that game to project how this game might turn out. So, like I said, the Vikings took that first matchup 34-31. Just as a note, though, the Packers did not have Aaron Jones, Rashawn Gary, Alan Lazard, or Robert Tunyon, or Jair Alexander for that game. And that was also the game that they lost Elton Jenkins to his torn ACL for the year. I definitely, to me at least, felt like a game where the Packers kind of screwed around for 3 quarters and made a bunch of bonehead errors. Dad, I don't know if you feel the same way.
Well, I'm trying to remember, I think this is the game they had that Cousins tried to throw 3 interceptions to them or something like that, and they couldn't come up with any of them.
Sounds like Cousins to me. I believe it.
I remember thinking afterwards, like, man, they were trying to give us the game, and we just kept dropping it.
I mean, they were trying to give us the game the whole second half. I mean, we were down 13 points with 3:35 left in the third, and came back at the start of the fourth, took the lead 24-23. We fell behind again, 24-31. The Vikings converted their 2-point conversion on a Dalvin Cook run. Then we tied it up again on a massive MVS, like 75-yard deep shot.
Is that like deep post?
He was just running free. I think it was a deep post, something like that. He was just running free, or he had a guy on him, but the safety was nowhere near fast enough to catch him. But in one of the few instances last year of the defense letting the team down, They let Kirk Cousins take the Vikings down the field, 2-minute drive for a game-winning field goal, and that was it. That was all she wrote. The Packers defense kind of crumbled a little bit down the stretch. I think it was one of their worst games last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it made a big difference. They already were without Jair, but when they didn't have Gary, they weren't able to get. I mean, they had 2 sacks by Preston, 4 tackles for a loss, but that's kind of it. And I think they had too much. Just had too much time. Of course, those numbers would have looked a lot different if they came up with some of those interceptions. But still, I think one of the differences is the lack of pressure without one of the, which is kind of the thing that's a little scary about this year. If we're missing one of Preston or Gary.
I mean, yeah, we saw it last year, and I mean, Gary. I think that was the game where I realized, like, wow, Rashawn Gary is really important to this defense. Like, even more than I realized. Like, he was probably I think he's getting up to about Kenny Clark levels of importance. I know that's a bit of a hot take because Kenny is amazing. Kenny's awesome. I think Rashawn Gary is probably more important than Kenny Clark this year. And I don't think that's even that bold of a take given the D-line.
No, I don't think so. I think he's actually kind of at the level now where Kenny was previous years, where the drop-off between Gary and the guy who comes in for him is enormous and probably the biggest on the team. While in other years you could have said that for Kenny because of who else was on the defensive line next to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, Gary, I think combination of the depth behind him not being as good and also just the strides that he's made as a player in the last, year and a half. Last year, sorry. I wouldn't be I don't feel too bold saying he's a top 10 edge rusher in the league at all.
Oh, yeah, not at all. Yeah, he's become elite, and by all indications from camp and what people are saying is he's made another jump this year.
It reminds me
compared to last year.
Yeah, it reminds me of that the camp where Zadarius Smith was first with the Packers, and everyone's like, no one can block him. He's walking through every single time he's in the backfield. They can't even practice because he's too effective.
Let's hope that's not the case this week.
I know, right? Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that a little bit. But I think while we're talking about the Packers defense, we can talk a little bit about how the Packers defense fared against the Vikings in that game. And pretty much what happened was Justin Jefferson completely annihilated the Packers. He had 8 catches for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is just patently absurd. He is amazing. He's very good. And then Thielen Thielen tacked on 8 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown himself. So, the lack of pass rush and lack of Jair playing, the Vikings receivers just eviscerated the Packers secondary last year.
Yeah, this is when you can tell that Stokes wasn't ready by this game. Not as effective. He was still going through some growing pains.
Well, and then, I don't know. I don't know if it's fair to say he's going through growing pains. He's going against a top 2, top 3 receiver in the league. He's getting his
Jefferson is really good. That was
good corners can't guard these guys.
Yeah, you can't completely shut somebody down at that tier.
No. I think Jefferson's a top 3 receiver in the league for me. It's Devontae Cooper, Kupp, and him, and then everyone else. But that's just my opinion.
I think the only other person you'd put in that tier right now, we'll see how it goes this year, is Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of such good receivers in the league. But anyway.
But I wouldn't argue with your top 3.
Yeah, I mean, so the Vikings receivers completely annihilated the Packers. Looking at the rest of it, Kirk Cousins had a really good game, 343 yards for 3 touchdowns and no picks. Not for lack of trying, as we said.
Yes, it's not that he had 0 pick-worthy throws. He just didn't end up with any picks.
Yeah, the Packers said, we're good. We don't need those. And then Dalvin Cook had 22 carries for 86 yards and a touchdown and 3 catches for 29 yards, putting him at above 100 yards on the total for the game. So pretty much all of the Vikings good players just kind of did what they wanted, I would say. It's fair to say.
Yeah, everybody had a good game of their top skill players.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that's going to need, obviously, to change. But, not having Gary, having Jair back, hopefully, Jair... So, I was going to save this for later in the podcast, but I think now is a good time to bring it up. The last time that Jair and Justin Jefferson played was in 2020 in November, the November 1st game. Jefferson was coming off of a 9 for 166 yards and 2 touchdown games, had 3 100-yard games in his last 4. But Jair and the Packers secondary that game held him to 3 catches for 26 yards. And I know Jefferson has grown a lot since then, but clearly he was already very elite as a rookie. How does that Jair-Jefferson matchup go this time? I think it's going to be a really big barometer for how this game goes this year.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the Packers' defense in this coming game versus that game, we are essentially adding what we think are 2 all-pro caliber players to the defense compared to that game with Gary and Jair, as well as other peripheral improvements with Quay Walker, Jerron Reed, and improvement for other players on the roster.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing to note and a good reason to be hopeful for why the defense, if you wanted to make the case for why the defense would be better this time, there's a lot of good evidence there, as you just pointed out, that there's a lot of reasons that the defense can be better this time versus the Vikings, as opposed to last year when they really struggled when Kirk Cousins played. But now let's take it over to how the Packers offense fared against the Vikings last year. Actually, a very good game for the Packers. Rodgers, 23 for 33, 385 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like I said, they did not have Aaron Jones. They did struggle on the ground, only 11 carries for 53 yards for Dillon. But part of that is a bit of they were down so much of the game that they did have to pass a lot. MVS had 123 yards and a touchdown. Devontae had 115 yards and 2 touchdowns. But unfortunately, the non-MVS and Devontae pass catchers combined for just 147 yards and 1 touchdown. And
yeah,
I think that is definitely
44 of those yards were
Dillon. Yeah,
his other yards.
So only 103 yards for the other receivers on the team and tight ends.
And that includes the tight ends, right? From the wide receivers alone, it was just 51 yards from the others.
So lots of room for growth, I guess.
We had I think we had 36 from EQ and 15 from Cobb, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like EQ's here, so let's just say there's a lot of food on the plate for everyone to have a bite of. You know,
we're only returning 15 wide receiver yards from that game.
You know, give or take. Yeah. The thing is, it's like I'm not gonna worry too much. They've added a lot of there's some pass catching juice that has been added there, and there's a lot of opportunity to take it.
Yeah. That doesn't actually worry me too much. That thinking about if you actually broke it down, how many, because Lazard didn't play that game. Were there other players we have on the roster we didn't last year? Well, but hopefully Lazard plays this week.
I'm not holding my
against
breath.
That secondary. And with the way that LaFleur can scheme people open, I'm not that worried about being able to get yardage.
Think about it.
Secondary.
MVS is a very good player. He was more experienced, but I think just talent-wise, I don't think there's a lot that he did for the Packers that there's any reason you think that some combination of Sammy Watkins, Romeo Doubs, and Christian Watson can't do. You know,
right?
So I think that it's one thing to say that Tay's production can't be matched because he was that good. I think there's a lot there that Dobbs, and there's a lot with MVS's usage there, and I think that actually is a bit of a green flag in terms of, hey, this deep threat was able to put up a lot of production versus the Vikings last year. It's still just Harrison Smith back there at safety, and the second safety is a question mark if Lewis Seen doesn't play. And it's honestly still a bit of a question mark even if he does. But
I think he may have already moved up to number 2 on the depth chart. Is that right?
I have not seen, but I wouldn't be surprised if first-round pick. But I think the fact that a deep threat, just a kind of a pure speed guy in a lot of ways, no disrespect, was able to have that success is a good sign for Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Sammy Watkins, etc. Like those deep guys. I think that's nice.
Yeah.
And then another quick note I had for the Packers is that the receivers had 3 carries in that game, which I thought was a nice little nugget. They gave EQ and Amari Rodgers both carries. Rodgers had a carry, I think, for 18 yards.
Are you? That might have been Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yes.
That's
a good
Rodgers.
Point. A Rodgers. It's not the Rodgers. It's not the Rodgers.
It's
no. Yes, you are probably right.
Those
yes.
are actually Aaron Rodgers scrambles, not Amari Rodgers carries.
Ignore everything I just said. But I would like to see Amari get some touches, though. Was what I was going to lead into this.
I think that's something they're doing a lot more of this year than they were even trying last year. I mean, they did some Amari jet motion, but they only actually handed the ball I think less than 5 times all year. It was small.
It was not a lot.
But there was but they've been lining him up, and this week he was working with the running backs apparently for some of the drills.
Yeah,
on Wednesday, maybe I forget what day, but he was there at the beginning of before team period doing a few of the running back drills.
Yeah, and like we said in our 53-man roster breakdown, go check that out. It's on YouTube, Spotify, etc. Like we said before, he is the de facto third running back in this offense right now, unless barring promotion during game day, which they'll probably do for emergency sake. But I wouldn't be surprised if he has the third most carries on the team by the time the year is done.
Yeah, it's going to be very curious. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do in terms of call-ups from the practice squad.
Yeah. I mean, with Devontae out this year, or not out, but gone, you know what I meant. I think this is the year that LaFleur really empties the bag on the tricks. He's just going to be pulling out the jet sweeps, pulling out the motion nonstop. Because I can't remember who it was, but someone was saying that Devontae being here was kind of a tie to the old Rodgers style of offense, where it's a bit of trust the guy to beat him, mostly timing in the routes, just a lot of one-on-one stuff. Whereas now that Devontae's gone, it's going to be probably not as good of an offense, obviously, because you don't have the best receiver in football, but that it's going to be a lot more on LaFleur to make the offense run, and so it's going to be a lot more LaFleur-style tendencies, such as lots of end-arounds in motion for Amari Rodgers.
Yeah, I think the thing that could unlock this offense to being better than last year's, at least last year's playoff offense, is going to be the offensive line. How healthy are they when the playoffs roll around? And that's something we're just going to have to wait and see.
I mean, we're going to have to wait and see how healthy they are for week 1.
Yeah, every week. But even if they're healthy now, I think the big thing that'll make the difference, I think, in the playoffs for them this year versus others is going to be if they have a fully, their number ones on the offensive line at all the positions, which they haven't had the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I think a big reason that the offensive line is so important for this weekend is that while we've talked a little bit about how the Packers team has changed from last year to this year as we've tried to apply what we learned versus that game versus the Vikings to this year versus the Vikings, a lot has changed for the Vikings, including the fact that they have Danielle Hunter back and have signed Zadarius Smith. So they have added 2 all-pro, Pro Bowl level pass rushers to their defense since the last time we played them, which for a team that doesn't exactly know which tackles are starting week 1 is a bit scary, I would say. I don't know. I think it's a bit scary.
That's a little nerve-wracking to think about what our tackle is going to be. If I guess we're just going to have to wait and find out. This is the thing: LaFleur knows. I think he said he already knows what 5 are going to start. Though he's not. He won't divulge until Sunday morning who the starting 5 are going to be on the line. Yeah,
and I mean that tackle situation's a little dire because, like I said, those pass rushers are. They're nothing to play. Those are premium level pass rushers in the NFL. But I think we would be a bit remiss to say, if we didn't talk a little bit about the Zadarius Smith conversation that's been going on this week. What do you think, Dad?
Captain, not captain, Zadarius Smith.
Oh, captain, my not captain.
Yeah. So,
I will say, though,
I don't know how much to make of what he's saying now, I mean,
he's on the other
something
team.
was
I don't blame him for talking trash. Like
right.
that's part of the
Exactly,
that's part of the deal.
in some ways, is exactly what you expect. He's trying to, work himself up, get hyped up for the game, looking for motivation.
Yeah, I don't have any real bad blood. I've seen a lot of fans on Reddit have like bad blood with Zadarius Smith being like, "Oh, you didn't try last year. You didn't try to come back." That I will always have good memories of Zadarius Smith. He was one of my favorite Packers for the 2 years that we had him.
I mean, I got a Zadarius Smith jersey. He was a lot of fun. I enjoyed him by the Packers.
He was my favorite Packer for a year and a half, 2 years. Like I'll still always love Z.
It was fun. The Smith brothers interviews, the sacks, destroying the Vikings. That was all fun.
That game was crazy when he had like 4 sacks and 6 tackles for a loss.
But
great game.
Yeah, whatever happened last year, I think he's now using it to get himself ready for the game. Which is
I don't blame him. If you haven't seen what he said, for those good listeners at home, what he pretty much said was when he came back from back surgery, he felt ignored by not just the team as a whole, but individual members of the team. Like they weren't even like asking him how he was doing. And I think that plus not being voted to captain after being a defensive captain for 2 years, being the defensive captain for 2 years, I think kind of rubbed him the wrong way. And now he's on the Vikings. He said he joined the Vikings because he wanted to play us twice a year. It is what it is. Matt LaFleur was asked about it.
It was sort of his first choice. He was going to sign with Baltimore, and then that fell apart for some reason.
Yeah, it's a bit of each person saying different reasons why it fell apart. He said he never agreed. They said that he asked for more money after agreeing, yada, yada, yada. But pretty much someone asked LaFleur that during the presser today, and he said, well, I'll always have love for Zadarius and what he did during his time here. I remember things a little differently, but it is what it is. And so I think, like, there's no reason to make a bigger deal of it than you have to. I think everyone's going to be kind of smiles and waves, like, before the game, and then once the game starts, obviously, they'll be trying to rip each other's heads off because football, because good old football. Yeah, all in good fun. I don't think
the end is that this will turn out to be nothing.
Yeah,
the game.
or we just really beat them that badly that he's upset, but not too upset. I'll take that too.
And there are other ex-Packers on the Vikings.
Yes,
Chandon Sullivan.
They've also added Chandon Sullivan. That's a good note. I always thought Chandon Sullivan was better than people realized, in my opinion.
Well, I think what happened is he started off really well when they first got him off of, was it Jacksonville?
Eagles.
Or no, Eagles.
I think it was the Eagles.
But then I think he kind of stalled. He didn't get any better. And maybe people found his weaknesses or something, because he seemed to have not been quite as good and was able to get targeted in games and by the good quarterbacks anyway.
Yeah, so they made that.
So hopefully that we can return that favor.
Yeah, so they made that addition. They've made a couple additions along their O-line. I know they're very happy with how their tackle, Christian Darrisaw, their second-year tackle, has come along. I think a lot of people, Peter Schrager of Good Morning Football had him as one of his breakout players this year, if I'm not mistaken. So that addition. And then the biggest addition, I think, is the new coaching staff.
Oh, yeah, and a completely different philosophy. As opposed to Zimmer being a defensive-minded coach, now they've gone with a offensive-minded head coach from the McVay tree. So,
I know Zimmer saw offense as an inconvenience. I think he really did. I think he wanted points per stop.
He may have also seen some of the offensive players as inconveniences. If you believe the rumors about how
much he hated Kirk Cousins.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
But an entirely new offensive...
We could be seeing a similar style played by the Vikings as by the Packers.
Yeah, and it's Kevin O'Connell, formerly the offensive coordinator of the Rams. He's from that McVay tree. So they're going to be running a lot of the same things as us. We'll see how it works for them. They kind of had something sort of similar when they had Stefanski there, you could say, but obviously he was just the offensive coordinator, not the head coach. So I think the offense might be a little more similar to that year 3 years ago when Stefanski was the offensive coordinator there, just as a bit of a kind of like margin for comparison. But those, I think, are the biggest changes that the Vikings have going forward this year.
Yeah, and they've also had a couple of Packers coaches or former Packers coaches. Mike Smith,
yes,
linebackers
Mike Smith,
coach, and Mike Pettin.
I miss Mike Smith. He was so good. He was such a good coach. But yeah, so they got a lot of people who know the Packers. So there are definitely a lot of advantages there for them.
Yeah. Yeah, but
I think it's fair to say.
I think both sides are going to mostly know what to expect from the other.
That's fair. Although
I think
there's not really a lot of... I mean, there's no game tape on the Vikings right now because this is going to be their first game with this head coach.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say. But anyway, that's kind of a brief preview based on last year's game, comparing it to how it might affect this year's game. We're just going to jump into now some general thoughts we have. And we're going to start with some things that, just general things that we're positive, excited to see. Something that I'm excited to see is, what is the starting O-line? Are we going to get, finally, for the first time ever, Bakhtiari at left tackle, Elton Jenkins at right tackle? It would be the first time, right? Or no? They played 10 snaps before Lane Taylor got hurt. Right? And then Elton Jenkins had to move back to guard. Do you remember that?
But also, I forgot. I guess Jenkins played a few snaps at tackle then?
Yeah, it was week 1 versus the Vikings in the COVID year. And Lane Taylor got hurt. And then they had to kick Elton Jenkins back in, I think, if I remember correctly. But I think that's what was the time you were thinking of? Because I think that's the only time we've had.
Yeah. It's not what I was thinking. It, of course, doesn't work.
You were thinking the Lions game last year?
Yeah, because Jenkins was out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. Will we ever? And I think this is actually what the Packers have been planning on for a number of years.
You know what they say?
Like, who's going to be the tackle? Who's going to be the tackle? They've been planning for Jenkins to be the tackle, I think, for 3 years.
You know what they say about the best laid plans?
They have drafted 9 offensive linemen in the last 3 years. And only one
tackles.
of them is a tackle who is staying at tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 7th rounder, Rasheed Walker. Everybody else has been an interior lineman or somebody they're converting to interior lineman. So clearly
Zach Tom is still a tackle. I just want to argue that Zach Tom is still a tackle. I know he's listed second in the unofficial depth chart at right guard or left guard. Sorry, for some reason, inexplicably, I don't understand.
Best position might be tackle, but I think they've been drafting with the idea of drafting interior offensive linemen. And
I mean, the thing is, you're gonna have to pay Elton. You can't pay a left tackle premium money, a right tackle premium money, and a left guard premium money. So you're gonna have to play Elton at right tackle. It just is what it is.
Yeah, but you can see that's the way their draft strategies indicates that they thought Elton was a right tackle.
Yeah, but anyway, that's what I personally am really excited to see because I can't wait for the day. Someday, please, hopefully Sunday, we get our 2 starting tackles that we were promised. Please, for the love of God, please.
And I think they were both practicing in teams today.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. That's what LaFleur said today, that they were both practicing in teams. So while they were both limited, it's a good sign.
That's a good sign.
We will take good news. But
we will take good news and blow it up into any kind of fantastic.
I'll blow it out. I'll blow good news out of proportion any day of the week. But like I've said a lot of times, and I've heard a lot of people agree with me, until they're out on the field and taking snaps in a game, I'm not going to expect anything because I got burned too bad by Bakhtiari just waiting week after week last year. And not to say it's his fault or anything, but I'm just not going to get my hopes up again.
Yeah, so that's also the little bit of one of the things we're nervous for the game too is what's the O-line going to look like, and so we'll see. And then if one of them can't go, how do they shuffle around to fill it in? But hopefully that's not a question we'll have to have answered this year.
And Yash at left tackle, I feel okay.
Yeah,
I mean, he's going against. It is what it is.
The right tackles, the right side of the line, that seems like they haven't quite decided what it is. If
Zach Tom, come on down.
I would love it if it was Zach Tom, but I don't think that's their plan.
I mean, I would love it. I don't know if Zach Tom would love having his first game be against two all-pro pass rushers, but I'm sure he feels he's ready for it. Not to say he's not, but that would be a very tough task for a rookie. Week 1, here you go. Here are two of the biggest, strongest, fastest dudes on the planet. Have fun.
I guess we'll see.
Especially the stylistic rushers that they have in terms of they're so powerful, and Zach Tom is a bit of a smaller tackle. It's not a good matchup for him.
What could be the weak spot for Tom?
Yeah,
is facing up to a power bull rush. So that Za'Darius likes that, half man power rush.
First 3 snaps, he's just gonna try and go right through his face and see if he can stop him. And if he can't on those first 3, it's not stopping. It's that every single snap for the rest of the game. He's gonna try to go right through him. But like we said, that's something we're excited for. That's something we're nervous for. Like we said earlier, another thing we're excited for is that Jair versus Jefferson matchup, but we touched on that before. But Dad, who are you excited to see this weekend?
So it's excited or curious or hopeful?
I think it could be all three. A little
that's what I'm saying.
combo.
It's one of those, and I'm not sure which one you want to say it is. But, there's the question of what is Sammy Watkins going to do? Because part of this is is Lazard going to be able to go? If Lazard isn't going to be able
I'm leaning no. I'm leaning he's not going to play, is what I'm thinking.
He's basically been a DNP for the first 2 practices already. But so then who's the number 1? And probably Sammy Watkins. So what is the potential of Sammy Watkins being the number 1 in the year 2022? So I went back, and I think people have been throwing around this notion of week 1 Sammy. Week
1 Sammy's a Hall of Famer, man. Week 1 Sammy is the first ballot Canton guy.
So I went through this a little bit. I wanted to look at a little more detail myself. So what I actually looked at Watkins' first 3 games from the last 5 years, and how did he actually look? So the idea is, how much does he have in the tank when he's not injured? Thinking at the beginning of the year he's healthy as he's going to be, and how well can he actually still play? Does he still have skills? And the answer is really well. So in those 15 games, if you then take those and prorate it over, a 17-game season, he would have had 122 targets, 84 catches, 1,180 yards, and 8 touchdowns, and a yards per target of 9.7. Just to put those in context, the number of catches would have been 16th in the league last year. The number of yards would have been 8th. The number of touchdowns would have been 12th, and the yards per target for qualifying people who had at least 50 catches would have been 20th. So his play,
Week 1 Sammy,
his play in the first 3 weeks of the season has been really good. Basically a wide receiver 1, and there's not actually a significant drop off.
From that year 1 to year 5 that you were...
2017, he had kind of a little bit of a blip, I would say, in terms of yards per catch compared to the others. But that has, a couple really big games. But it's generally, there's not been this drop-off the last 2 years compared to the previous ones in terms of average. It's that, That's why the idea of Sammy is so tempting. The yards per game in those first 3 games in 2021, it was 69. In 2020, it was 52. In 2019, it was 104 because he had 1 big monster game. In 2018, it was 59. And in 2017, it was 65.
That's the thing with Sammy. That's why he is the idea of Sammy is better than actual Sammy, unfortunately. Let's hope it's not the case this year.
I don't think
but the idea
apparently
No, I think the idea of Sammy is better because you're talking as if those 3 games, if he has ever kept that pace, which he hasn't. I'm not saying he can't. I'm saying he never has.
What I'm saying is that he can be a beginning of the year frontline wide receiver.
Yes,
Until
that's fair.
Until other players have gotten their feet under them, or Lazard is healthy, and
I
maybe
think
this
that's
will
a
be
really
the
good
year,
point.
like his second year in the league or whatever it was, when he's a 1,000-yard receiver.
I'm not going to count on that, but I think the point about him playing, I think the point about him playing very well and letting the rookie receivers grow into their roles is a really important point to make, because I think that's a completely reasonable expectation.
Right, and I think that is a reasonable expectation based on his own history, and that's a history that's already taking into account, the disappointments that people have had with him in those years.
And the thing is, that's the player they paid for. They paid for a player who has been inconsistently injured. If he wasn't inconsistently injured, they would not have been able to afford him.
Yeah. The other thing that I just wanted to throw in here is, like, his numbers for the 2019 playoffs for the Chiefs.
Oh, he kicked ass in the playoffs for the Chiefs.
2 catches, 76 yards. 7 catches, 114 yards and a touchdown. 5 catches, 98 yards. His 3 playoff games on their championship run.
He had one of the biggest plays in the Super Bowl for them.
Yeah,
he used Devontae's route.
Devontae's move to beat Richard Sherman.
Yeah, he said, I saw Devontae do it, and I knew it would work. And I was like, fair enough.
So when he's healthy, he can still do it, it seems to be.
I mean, the joke is always that he can't get healthy, and I do feel bad for him on that. I'm hoping for him, because if he can stay healthy, like you said, that's a top 25 at least receiver in the league. And honestly, you don't even need him to be that. You need him to be good. And you need him to be healthy-ish. I think they should give him the Bulaga treatment, personally. Wrap him in duct tape. Wrap him in bubble wrap 3 days a week. 3 days a week. At least give him one practice, so that, because him and Rodgers haven't played together before. Give him one practice, then wrap him in bubble wrap. And then that's it.
You just want to keep those hamstrings warm. Otherwise, that's it. Just unroll the bubble wrap for game
Keep
day.
the hamstrings warm, but just put him in a little bubble, because we need him. But in terms of some players that I'm excited for, I'm excited to see Rudy Ford. It's going to be his first game with the Packers. I love a good gunner.
Great Rudy Ford gunner.
I love a good gunner. Future Packer Hall of Famer Rudy Ford. Future GOAT Packer gunner.
He's going to be so good. They're going to create a position of gunner in the Hall of Fame
just for him.
Just for Rudy Ford.
That's that nice homer take that you come to this podcast for. And then I'm really excited to see Christian Watson's first game on the field. It sounds like he's going to play. He's a full participant in practice. It's going to be his first time ever suiting up for the Packers, preseason or otherwise. So that's really exciting.
It's going to be like opening a Christmas present, because we don't know what exactly it's going to look like yet.
Yeah. How many? What percentage of snaps do you think he plays? If assuming Lazard does not play, what percentage of snaps do you think he plays?
Assuming Lazard does not play, I will say 35%.
Okay. You think Dobbs plays more?
I think Dobbs will play more.
I agree. But I think that's reasonable.
I think the primary starting boundary receivers will be Watkins and Dobbs, Cobb in the slot. I think the other thing this is going to mean is actually probably more snaps for Amari, because Lazard plays a lot of slot.
That's true.
So I think that slot position may be split more 50-50 between Cobb and Rodgers, without Lazard soaking up some of those snaps.
I could see it. And but yeah, those are some things that I'm excited for. But Dad, what else are you nervous for besides the O-line?
Kick and punt coverage.
The old reliable.
The
old unreliable.
I am less concerned actually for returns, because
just catch the ball and go out of bounds. I don't care if we start at the 10.
Fair catch, or let the touchback happen, or get your 6 yards on a punt return.
Did you see what Bisaccia said about the return units though? Today.
No, I missed
in his
that.
presser. He said that Amari is rotating punt returning and kick returning, but they have not set a starter at that position yet.
Oh, okay. Even though, so the depth chart, of course, we know the depth chart is sort of a make-believe document anyway.
It's a Fugazi, it's a Wazi, it's a Woozy, it's a fairy dust. It doesn't exist.
Though
it's not on the elemental plane. I could do that entire Matthew McConaughey thing, I think, but I won't get us copyright stricken for doing that all the way through.
Too late.
I know, right? This has been the Father Son Packers podcast, but anyway.
But Amari has done the bulk of the returning in preseason games. Both, punting and punt return and kick return. So we'll see.
The only one that was doing it really besides him was Rico Gafford, who's on the practice, not even on the practice squad. They cut him.
He's not on the team anymore.
Yeah, he's not on the team anymore. So the only one
Goodson,
really.
They tried Goodson a little bit. He's not on the team anymore. Well, he's on the practice squad. So
if you want to believe the unofficial depth chart, Randall Cobb is second on punt return, which
they tried it last year.
Make of that what you will.
When Amari was really struggling, they threw Cobb back there, and that also did not go well.
I was going to say, and Cobb struggled too. So here we are.
But
I think, we'll see. Like you said, punt and kick coverage is something you're nervous about.
Can they stay in their lanes? Can they prevent the big returns?
How many starters do you think play on punt and kick coverage?
I'm thinking only like 3 or 4.
Which 3 or 4 are you thinking? Quay, Amos.
Amos is probably going to play some. Quay will play some.
Campbell.
I wonder, will they put both their starting inside linebackers on coverage?
It's really tough, isn't it? It's not ideal.
But I think they might, and maybe, well, it's not really a starter.
Douglas?
Starting...
I could see Douglas playing some teams.
Could be playing some teams.
Yeah. But they did say, Bisaccia did say he wanted to play...
Starting H-back Josiah
DeGuara. Starter. Bisaccia did say he wanted to get more starters on the special teams units.
Yeah, but I'm curious to see what's going to happen, when you have Ford as a gunner and then maybe somebody like... I don't know if Toure is ready. I think he's got gunner potential. He showed some in college. But
the past 2 years A.J. Dillon has played special teams. I do not think he's going to play special teams this year.
Maybe not after that broken rib incident.
Maybe not after the fact that he's their second best offensive player.
Yeah, that too.
And I'm including Aaron Rodgers. I think A.J. Dillon is better than Aaron Jones, in my opinion.
A.J. Dillon has been more valuable. I think in part last year, A.J. Dillon was more valuable because of the makeshift offensive line. They needed players to make their own yards. I think Aaron Jones can get the big breakaway if he gets through the front of the defense more often than Dillon can. But without their, 2 best offensive linemen, they were not as good at making the holes for the runners last year.
That's true.
And that's another thing. I think actually they get their starting running back. It's not just about the pass pro. It's about the improvement for the run game too.
Yeah. But that's what you're nervous about. What I'm nervous about for this game is if Darnell Savage can't go or if he's limited, who is playing that other safety spot? It's probably Rasul Douglas with Keyshawn Nixon in the slot.
I think that's probably option number 1.
How on earth are they going to stop Jefferson or Thielen over the top? Am I crazy? I'm not crazy, right? Like that's concerning, isn't it?
It's concerning.
Because it's like, if Savage isn't back there, there's not a lot of speed back there. Because Amos is amazing, but he's not that fast. And Douglas is very good, but he's also not that fast.
No. I think it's going to have to be, playing back. Though Thielen's not that fast. I think,
you don't got it. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But I think Douglas's skills may actually work pretty well with regarding Thielen.
Yeah, I'm viewing Jefferson over under 120 yards for Justin Jefferson week 1.
His question: does Jair follow him no matter where he goes?
I think he should. I don't know if he will, but I think he should.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's a lot harder for him to follow him if Douglas has to play safety and they bring in Nixon, because Nixon's not playing on the outside. Nixon's a slot-only guy. You can't have Jair follow Jefferson to the slot if Nixon's playing the slot, because Nixon can't move outside.
It is true that Nixon rated much better in the slot than the boundary last year, but so here are your choices. What's harder? Nixon in the slot where he's better against Jefferson, or Nixon on the boundary against who's their number 3 guy?
KJ Osborne, who's actually pretty good. Micah Abernathy season. Let's bring him in, folks.
Yeah. I kind of like Abernathy. I thought he was looking good.
I'm glad they were able to get him back.
And he's pretty athletic.
Yeah, I'm really glad they were able to get him back. But that's what I'm really concerned about. Let's kind of wrap this thing up with some score predictions. Dad, you want to? I'll go first. Personally, I think the Packers are going to struggle a lot to start the season. I do still think that they have what it takes to win the Super Bowl. But in this game, I'm taking the Vikings 24, Packers 13. It's in Minnesota. Packers don't really have their whole starting O-line. They don't have the number 1 receiver. It's the first week of the year. I'm taking the Vikings, unfortunately, even though they are my least favorite team.
I hope they have their starting O-line. I mean, that's actually more optimistic than what happened last year, and we won 13 games.
That's fair. But that's my score prediction. I do think the Vikings are going to win, unfortunately. I'm going to be pissed all week because of it, but it is what it is.
I have the same numbers as you, but I have it reversed. I have the Packers winning 24-13.
I hope you're right.
Because I think the Packers' defense is legit, and I don't see the Vikings able to score 24 points on them. I don't think they're going to be able to score very much. I think, and plus, it's
who said anything about the Vikings' offense scoring? Special teams. I'm calling 2 punt returns or 2 punt return touchdowns and 5 safeties, all from the Packers muffing punts.
Well,
I'll stop making the special teams jokes when the special teams stops being a joke.
It's not a joke?
Yeah, that's when I'll stop making the special teams jokes.
What about the 3 touchdowns that the Packers defense are going to score?
Well, see, Kirk Cousins, he'll let you in the game. He'll let you around.
So I think the Packers defense is going to shut the Vikings down, and I think their defensive line is so much better. I think it's going to be better against the run than they've been for years, and they've got all their. Well, if they have Savage, they have their main cover guys and their deep protection. We'll see what Savage does, and I think the Vikings are going to take a little while to figure out their offense.
It's true.
Actually,
new coaching staff. It's very true.
First game with this new offense, so I think they won't have all cylinders going either.
Fingers crossed. But anyway, Dad, I think we're getting up to about time. But that has been our pregame podcast for the Packers-Vikings Week 1. We will be doing these every Thursday night, releasing them Friday morning for you guys throughout the year. We will also be doing a postgame pod on Sunday night that we will be releasing Sunday night, and you can then listen to Monday morning. But yeah, we'll be doing 2 weeks from now on. We would love if you guys kept listening. We'd love bringing you guys Packers content. Dad, anything to say to the beautiful people before we call it a night?
People, you're beautiful. And
fair enough.
All you Packers fans.
Yeah, especially the Packers fans. You're extra beautiful.
Fans. Or anybody who wants to listen to us. You guys are beautiful.
Yeah, but the Packers fans are extra beautiful. But anyway, that'll be all for us, guys. Thanks again for listening. Go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.